Nice to meet you, guys. It's good to be here, and I will quickly present you if you want, or I can give you the word to present yourself, what is beneficial most for you. But it's good that we, from different genres, from different perspectives, can talk more about mobile UA performance. And yeah, so the first one is Kamil Ciukszo. He's from the Alter Data IO with more than 20 years experience in data and operations with it. So he can, I think, know how to work in every sphere which is possible right now. On the web page, it's like that. I see like telco, TSLC, mobile, and almost anything you can imagine. So he can definitely create the miracle from the data which you have. And also the Tomas Kleinmann here with us, and he's monetization expert with more than 10 years in mobile game and worked for Stop Loss in Studios publisher, Pixel Federation, and brings the deep understanding of player behavior and R&D. He right now will share with us his experience. Also the Genrikh Lukianchuk. He was the general manager in the Eurozone and in the Google, and right now he's the general manager in Eurozone at Bidease, and he was the head of sales in the Google and SIA and MENA region. His team is fully transparent demand-side platform that helps to achieve the pragmatic performance advertisement. And the biggest clients are Google, Apple, Amazon, and G5, and a lot of other big clients. And also, I missed.
My name is Jakub Kukuryk.
Yeah, Jakub.
Thank you. I'm a data developer.
Sure. You can, Jakub Kukuryk, he's from the art part of this. He's more than 10 years experience in art in the front end and in animation. He knows how to create the best animations and playables for a lot of games. And right now, as the Popcore joined to the big Take-Two family, he definitely have experience in top games and also all type of genres, so it will be good to see it from a different perspective. I propose to have like quick questions to personally, and then you can answer from a different perspective on your own. So the first one will be to the Kamil. So as the CEO of Alter Data IO, could you please provide your perspective on how to optimize the mobile user acquisition and to improve LTV using the power of the data?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting to the panel. So, I personally do not run UA campaigns, but we support publishers and studios to do that with data. And my observation is that the power of data is something which helps companies to manage complex things. To improve user acquisition and lifetime value and profitability of the game, like any other business needs to earn money, and we have to control that. We have to measure all those small pieces all the time, predict when possible, when we have enough data, and again measure and experiment and measure and predict and measure. And maybe that sounds a little bit boring, but at the end of the day, the combination of all those puzzles, and especially if we have tools to measure complexity in many dimensions, we can improve it. 5% here, 10% there, 50% here, 500% somewhere, and on top of that, we are beneficial and we control it and we measure improvement, meaning that we see that those actions brought something, other actions didn't. And in my opinion, from that perspective, data is like a nervous system of the company, or same in the user acquisition, it's like a nervous system of user acquisition. If you don't know, you could be genius and have good intuition, that happens, but that's not constant. By using data, we are more able to drive it in more, let's say, predictable way. That's my short answer, I would say.
Yeah, maybe guys, Jakub, Tomas, again, if you have also some thoughts about it. you can share, or we can move to different question.
I must agree totally with you because we are using data in every way. We have a big data team, and from the product perspective or from the game design perspective of UA, I cannot imagine to work without like seeing those numbers and knowing that the numbers are correct. Definitely very good point.
Yeah, like without data you cannot move anywhere right now, as we see. Almost.
Well, you can, but you can only go so far. I would say that it's like driving at the night when it's raining and you don't have the lights on.
So better to have lights here. Don't drive in the night without the lights. And also, I will ask next question maybe. Tomas, so as in your role of product manager at SuperScale, so can you please discuss importance of product optimization to achieving the strong growth in the mobile game industry? Why should be done it, and why not maybe?
Okay, so it should definitely be done. As we all know, there's like this simple equation, like CPI needs to be lower than LTV. And the LTV is up to mainly like the development and design team. And this is where all the things that are like increase the LTV to be done. I would say that this is the problem for most of the companies. You can only do so much with the UA, but once you get a good monetization, economy systems, progression systems, engagement systems, you can increase the LTV rapidly, and that will, of course, scale up your game in terms of UA. So definitely, it's very important.
And so better not skip this moment to do this stuff, yeah, because otherwise we will just run into something. If you have some like other opinion, you can add. And right now I will go by the questions. So Jakub, maybe could you share the insights about innovative strategies related to the interactive advertisement that can help to improve user acquisition at Roas?
So talking about the innovation in playable ads, it's talking like about playable ads, because I think it's a quite innovating way of getting the players. But besides normal stuff about playables, it's everything about the data. So right now we collect the data from the beginning of creating playable ads. So from playable ads we could get very specific data. So we could measure how players use our playables, so we know what parts of the game they like or dislike. There's also a different way of using playable ads. Like if the company wants to create a game, they could start with the playable ads and see if the player even wants to play it, and just redirect to some kind of landing page. So I think the innovation stuff is to read those data. So the stuff what we do with those data, so it's the same like driving in the night. If we don't have the data, we don't know are we approaching to the good directions, and from that we can learn approach for the players.
And maybe you have some experience of creating, because I know some of the games were created just by playables, like you create a playable, you see that people are interested in it, you create a small game, and it goes, you test it by playables. So do you see like a lot of the publishers create this strategy of testing the concepts on the playables, or just like still?
So I don't have the knowledge about any company who do this. I just read documents, blogs on the web. We in Popcore advertise by playable ads only the games that we already have. And of course, creating playable ads it's not so quickly stuff to do. So we need to focus on which games we think we want to invest those times to create well-performing playable ads. And we mostly first collect the data from the videos, from the players that this game working, and this is the potentially place to advertise it and create the ads for this kind of games.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because I heard that it can be created just from the scratch by playable ads. It's one of the strategies. Genrikh, maybe you can tell more about cost-effective mobile and web development, and can you please elaborate how efficiency is ad spend can enhance the user acquisition strategies?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it would be a good idea to kind of distill a bit and talk about the kind of the high level overview of the kind of the C levels, what they're looking at when they're evaluating the efficiency of the marketing campaigns. So basically, if we are talking about kind of a high kind of AAA studios or like big publishers, publishing houses, mainly their finance side is looking at three main pillars where they evaluate the efficiency of money spent. And it's a bit, the vocabulary is a bit different from what we are kind of used to in terms of the LTVs and Roas and everything. They're more looking at the kind of the efficiency of the cash being used, basically of the assets, how much money is being reinvested back in the business, and how quickly it's done within, let's say, a cycle, within a quarter, half a year, or a year. And the second is, of course, profitability. Well, there's a third one, but we'll leave it because it's outside of the scope of this panel discussion. But anyway, there's two main kind of metrics. It's profitability, very kind of a broad metric, and the second is the efficiency of the reinvestment, the speed of reinvestment. So whenever we're talking about kind of the reinvestment, that's basically when we're looking at the Roas, right? And that's where we can try to analyze how quick the money can get back to the business, so the developer or the publisher can reinvest, can sustain the same level of efficiency. What happens usually when there is additional traffic sources being found that is a bit out of whack, out of kind of the norms that have been used before, is that the profitability, mainly kind of in our language, the CPR or the CPA levels became a bit elevated, and then the spend kind of starts decreasing on this either particular source or across other sources as the costs are becoming higher. What it translates to in general is kind of a double effect that the investors have on their equity side, is that it damages the profitability, well, because the traffic became more expensive, but at the same time the reinvestment speed declines, right? So it kind of just damages the return on equity in general. So what we're trying to do at Bidease is to ensure that we have a different traffic quality for different purposes, right? So for certain purposes, let's say for hyper-casual games specifically, when there is a possibility to generate a lot of cheap traffic in comparison, of course, it's always in comparison to, let's say, a standard traffic that can be generated from more expensive, let's say, geos, more expensive providers, SSPs, etc., but may not bring the LTV or the profitability that the publishers and developers sometimes desire in the long term, and at the same time to add additionally the more expensive traffic, but with, as we call it, with the more outliers or more volatility in the end, where you can spend, let's say, a week and acquire just one or two or three users that will generate tens and thousands of dollars per one game. It can also happen, right? So there's completely different behavioral characteristics of different traffic sources, and sometimes it's very hard to compare them between. So what we're trying to do is basically to slice and dice those traffic sources to ensure that all of the inventory is accessible to our clients.
Yeah, it's a good approach to find like one big whale and to then concentrate the optimization for this kind of persons into the game, and maybe they will do the 6 months plan in 2 months, and it will be really great. But can you maintain for a long time then in one game, because they just go into one game and don't want to switch to other? They spend it already a month there and.
Yeah, that's a good question. Usually, with all the traffic sources, they're not infinite, right? Even with the with the less expensive traffic sources, there is always an end. Especially when we talking about large publishers, large developers. and the same is even more relevant for kind of this. Yes, in Wales with the traffic was more extreme, kind of extreme on the outliers, because it's definitely harder for the let's say LAL model, look-alike models, because not all of them are easily transferable, let's say, to the other game, even from the same developer, from the same publisher. So that's, I would say, is more of a problem for Wales than for those who kind of are more prone to changing the application, jumping from one app to the other, spending a bit, and then downloading the next one. The kind of the loyalty is higher with Wales than with the kind of the regular folks.
Yeah, because it also can be some type of problem of creating the new game. Big players who spend already a lot can maintain in the old game and not switch to the new one. And to all of you guys, based on your individual experience, what do you perceive as the most common mistakes made in mobile user acquisition strategies, and what strategies can companies adopt into the this to ensure the higher ROAS and LTV? One by one, maybe question. Yeah, I will ask from
so
first.
maybe I wouldn't say that it is very objective, that it is a common for everyone, but what I observe sometimes, it's the focus on one thing, meaning that either short-term strategies like just judging campaigns on short level, but losing the visibility on the strategical perspective, what you mentioned a couple of times, that it has to be combination of different traffic sources, it has to combine those cheaper users and those whales and together, because this is influencing to each other, and those sources are not infinite, so they will finish, they will saturate the bigger components and faster, etc. So some people focus on operations are losing that mid and long-term perspective on profitability, and also on let's say also managing finance of the company in general, because it's another story, especially for bigger who are spending a lot.
Maybe Tomas, also in this field.
Yeah, definitely. So what we've noticed that our clients usually do as mistakes is that they don't iterate enough. So they run campaigns that run too long, and they or increase in CPIs. They don't test enough of new geos and lookalikes and so on. So this is the main issue that we usually come to and we try to fix. So it's the stage of our UA teams. We have weekly meetings regarding UA campaigns. We check which ones are running good. So for example, we had a campaign that was the best campaign for a year, but other ones are good for a month and then they just fall off. And we need to change creatives, we need to change the geos and so on. So I would say this is the main thing that usually people do as a mistake.
Sure. Genrikh, maybe your thoughts on this?
Well, I think I fully agree with your approach in general, but kind of in my opinion, the most important is the ability for, how to put it in a nice way, for the from our side, right, from the GSP, kind of the main narrative is to ensure that the clients are understanding what they're investing in, right? Because the market, I would say, in the 2020s experienced a very an outlier event itself, right, with the whole COVID pandemic, and right now we are going back to the norm, to the pre-COVID. So what we're observing right now is actually what is supposed to happen, to be honest, with certain exception, of economic cycle and everything. But in general, there is a narrative on the market, and you can hear it, going outside and speaking with people, especially in the hyper casual world, that the hyper cash is dying and everything. But in my opinion, it's not just dying. It's like, guys, we're getting back. Unfortunately, we're getting back to the norm. Yes, going through the economic cycle that all verticals are actually going right now. And basically, it became more of a relevancy of the idea of the testing, the idea of investing in kind of the bespoke algorithms, models that are able to attract the different clients across different segments for the business to actually sustain itself. So yeah.
And also, Jakub, from the point of creating the ads, I know that previously it was very popular, some kind of these videos, like in Shadow Legends, like cinematics, which have the long burn rate of the creative itself. It was really expensive one, but yeah. So maybe some points of creation, the creatives and the playables. So how they burn out?
I could tell about the playables
Sure.
because I of course cooperated with the team who made videos, and we don't often see that fantastic creations, video animations. They look amazing, but the effect is not perfect. So we see that people just like simple videos. I cannot prove with numbers, but we see the better CPIs. I could tell Playable side, so I cannot tell about the common mistakes, but we see that we need to remember that players will see ads inside of the other games. So we need to switch the context. I think when we create a video, we have focused on our game. We think it's an amazing game, the best game in the world. But you need to show the features, the core mechanic of the game in these few seconds and attract the new players. And I mentioned about the playables. When we show that we have a fantastic game with thousands of features, nobody would like to learn those features in those 5-15 seconds. Because, come on, I was fighting the boss of this game, and now you try to explain me how to jump on the barrels or something. But we also see that I have one experience with the time of the living of the tables. So we have one table. It has amazing span. It was so successful, but it happened because we didn't publish more games with this title. So we leave the time for the table, and it was fatiguing in the first month, and after a while it's exploded. It has so many numbers, so we could have problems to read this. So it was so amazing. But we see that if we put constantly new content, new ads, new videos, the algorithms don't have time to learn it. So sometimes it's the good strategy to just wait and give the time for the algorithms to learn the ads.
Yes, and so like the Thomas mentioned about the creativity of these playables, it's working like with the creatives, so you can create the slightly different variant with a different color, so it can be still performing.
We iterate with the same idea. The game that I'm talking is like it's called Scavenger Hunt. You need to find elements on the map. So every playable is the same. Like you need to find five elements on the map. And suddenly this one was working perfectly. So it was the main difference was like there was bigger contrast of this element, the funny animation when you find it. So we find some small elements that was working, and then we was iterating with the same idea, and not everything was working so well. So it's like we do the playables, we do the videos, we see that this is working, and we have no idea why. So it's like randomly sometimes, but okay, they like it, the algorithms like this, we try to copy and paste it to the other games.
Yeah, but then data can like work it out and say the reasons why in future. And also for Kamil and Genrikh, do you see the role of machine learning and AI optimization in the performance of the user acquisition campaigns in future? And what is this role will be? The main or still like?
It is. It exists. It's like hammer. So you have to use it. Otherwise, no. Just first. Without machine learning, you will not predict anything. Of course, you can, but econometrical predictions are valid for small amount of user. For example, they are, let's say, better than machine learning, which will not do anything. But machine learning is like one of the basic tool sets you have to use to predict anything, to predict Roas, to predict LTV, retention, everything. So it is like a basic tool right now. Maybe it's not so easy sometimes to understand and understand everything behind, but it is necessary to use it. And of course, it will have more and more usage because we are generating so many, let's say, information about any part of the life cycle of the game. For me, the most, let's say, important thing here is to try to make it a little bit holistically. Of course, do it in all parts of the process, but also take a look holistically on the whole process of the development, user acquisition, monetization, and experiments, testing, A/B testing, etc. And when we use it in a comprehensive way in all those pieces of the up to development and let's say promoting and earning, then it will bring the most value, because then we will take a look on many actions we perform in a similar way, and we predict potential outcomes. It will never be 100% true, but it's much better than guessing. So if we used to predict what's possible on every step of the cycle, then we will be much more beneficial. That's my perspective on machine learning. A lot of small hammers, let's say, together.
Makes sense. Yeah, like Genrikh, maybe something to add, or it was full answer?
Yeah, I'll just add that it's kind of very important to always check with any service provider, especially with PSP and SFPs, when they say this word like machine learning, everyone is like, oh my god, like machine learning. But what actually is meant by the machine learning? Because if it's just a general, let's say, linear regression with penalization, well, it's not machine learning what we expect to from this type of software company. If it's more of a, let's say, kind of a deep neural networks, then we'll start talking with random forest, like k-fold algorithms. Yes, and it's definitely a way better thing. But like the majority, unfortunately, that's that's the situation on the market, and I'm not trying to kind of tarnish everyone with one paint. But people are trying to sell machine learning because also this part of linear regression, basic stuff that exists for hundreds of years, to be honest, is just being added to the same bucket, where the actual innovation that happened over the last, let's say, 15 to 20 years, especially the last 5 years, is actually taking place, and sell it as deep learning, like deep algorithms. So it's kind of one thing, right? And the second, it's very important to distinguish where, for us, basically for DSP and SSP in our ecosystem, it's used because we use it both for the predictions, right, as you, Kamil, mentioned, and also for the market pricing kind of findings, where the actual bid, what the actual bid should be, right, how it should be priced, and the models that's being used at the moment by, in my opinion, the best DSPs in the market, coming from the finance world, because they've been using the kind of the option pricing model that's more or less similar, that's being used right now with the bid pricing, again with certain flavor adjustments, etc. But if you see kind of the people who are working behind as a data scientists, therefore specifically for bid pricing on ML side, usually, not always, but usually those people coming from this specific background. So yeah, that's different. It's always kind of always important, as we're saying, to do some due diligence to understand what type of ML was when the person is saying ML everywhere, and just doing the homework
and avoid black boxes when possible. Not every time is possible, but in many cases we have the buzzword, as you said, in many products, but nobody knows what's behind it. Nobody, and we can trust, we cannot. We can of course judge on effect potentially, but especially in many cases it is only the, let's say, the buzzword. Yes, so this is a tool. If we use it and we know what we do, that makes sense. In other cases, it could be like betting. Yes.
Yeah, but you can maybe name the percentage of trusting, or it's like totally depends on.
But I'm not talking about algorithm. But in many cases, you use somehow some kind of tool. You connect to some platform, yes, and it is marked with ML something, and it gives you some insight. But you don't have any clue how it works, what data it's based on, and how it's calculated, how it is, let's say, operationalized, whatever. And this is the risk of using. So for someone who is not aware what's behind, it's a risk. We are like a data company, so we develop everything, we control everything what we do, and let's say working with customers, they control together with us. Of course, let's say to that moment they can understand what we do, but usually it's open and it's clear if someone wants. But I'm talking about those, let's say, a la carte products you have around a lot, and you have machine learning, AI, whatever, but it's difficult to judge if it makes sense for you or not. That's the risk on that side.
Also security maybe, because like even the huge companies sometimes can cost security.
Security is another story, we can start another panel, but it is manageable, yes, it is manageable, yeah.
Jakub, Thomas, maybe you want to add something, or we can switch to a different question? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so how do you balance the drive for users acquisition, this need for users retention and engagement, and maybe especially given your respective roles in product management and Playable ads development?
That's a question for me, right? Okay. So it depends on multiple factors. Like one of the main factors is like in what stage the game is. Of course, if you're in technical soft launch, you won't drive a huge amount of traffic into your game. When you soft launch, you start to do these specific like geos and campaigns for I don't know tier 1 countries to check if it's feasible. Then of course global launch and live ops, that's again different thing. But what I would say is that mainly in live ops, when you so you're not always ready for like these big pushes. You still need to wait for these specific events when the events are up, and I would recommend to have some kind of event calendar with multitude of events that are repeating themselves in different intensities and different mechanics, which are also monetized. It always helps to drive the LTV, and in that case, your ROAS would be at least positive, if not even higher. Maybe one thing to add is regarding which wasn't like mentioned, is what we had a lot of success with was the peer engagement campaigns. So in last few years there were some mainly for Apple some problems regarding getting the information from the players. This proved, like the re-engagement campaigns proved to be a huge success for us. If you already have, like older game, 3 to 4 years or even more, you can target those players that spent the money before, and you will see great results with that. So definitely would recommend that.
So it's like the question of, have you already accumulated the big data from the previous game, and you can predict even there will be some restrictions from the platform, you still can like target those users who were the previous game. As you mentioned, it's one of the tips, and also to create the events on which you will plan by plan to...
Yes, definitely. Like the game is cyclical in terms of mainly live ops. There are better months, there are worse months. It's up to the UA managers to know when these specific seasons in specific geos are, and it is up to game designers and product managers to put events there, so we get the maximum potential of it.
And sorry, Jakub, from perspective of adding the ads to the scaling, or just what the best period in which you should so what's the best period in which you should include the players to this boosting of user acquisition? Maybe there is some or no.
So unfortunately I'm not from the UA, so I have no idea how they do it. They do it great job. I can just say we have not many campaigns with Playables to make the tables for the seasons. Like I will have some Patrick's days, but we need to know about in advance that there is some kind of events prepared because it's take time. It's not. Some players are able to do it in one day, but we can show everything. Okay, there will be some events, and we need to have time to publish this game because the playables and prepare the campaign. It's take time also.
So it was more the tip of Thomas, like to prepare the plan and go step by step, because otherwise it's gonna be.
Because somebody take holidays and stuff. Sure, I don't know that something's coming.
And for all questions, how do you foresee the future of mobile user acquisition and maybe given the evolving privacy regulations, rise of artificial intelligence, and maybe increasing market competition? So how do you foresee the future? Maybe Kamil, you
I'm not, let's say, exactly inside the, let's say, gaming business because we are not a publisher, but my perception is that, of course, the giants are, let's say, closing the space as much as they can, and others are fighting against it. That's one observation. So it will be more difficult to have, let's say, user-level data in the future. It started and it will continue. So at the end of the day, it will require more effort to be effective and to differentiate, let's say, to make a competitive differentiator. But definitely, due to the competition, this is very data-driven market. It used to be creative market. You had great idea, great title and success, and then maybe speed up to increase that. But right now, without being data-driven on every, let's say, piece of that, it's very difficult to have success. Maybe it will happen from time to time. There are some lucky shots, but this will be more competitive, more difficult to operate, and very data-driven. From my perspective, I like that it's data-driven because that's what we do, but in general, I think it's difficult. It is becoming more difficult market than it used to be for publishers and creators.
And from perspective of creating the like playables, do you think like AI can like grab this role, or still there is role for creativity? And
I think this is the same question of AI everywhere. So if ChatGPT could make everything inside of me, is it working or not? It's an amazing tool. This is again the second hammer. It's a tool, so hopefully nobody will lose the job or will create new jobs. But then, with this question about the future and stuff like that, I have huge hope for kind of HTML5 small games. Because when we're talking about playables, we're mostly talking about playables inside those platforms, mostly used in games. But small games like HTML5 games could be hosted on anywhere. It could be a browser game, so we are able to use those small games in the different platforms. So we could create a link to go to some kind of landing page. So we could make the campaign in Instagram, for instance. They don't have playable ads, but they have some redirection to the landing page. So we could redirect somebody to the landing page, so he will be able to play on our game inside the browser. So with that, we don't have any limitations from the providers, so we could download more assets, we can set whatever we want from the data, so we could access to the specific players' data from the Google Analytics, for instance. So we collect more data, we have no boundaries, we can do anything that we like. He could always escape and go back to the place from where he came, and he go to the store or the different page where he will be able to buy a game. So it will be also beyond games that will be in Google and Android in stores in mobile phone, because we can redirect to the page where you can buy any game. It could be also ads in the PC, so in the laptops, in the normal browser. So I hope there will be lots of other abilities for this kind of advertising, especially that it could give us high quality users, and they see the demo of the game and they can buy or use the games.
Yeah, we see this.
And the same, it not always need to be a game. You can advertise anything. So maybe some product, maybe some different platforms.
Like unification, you have like one app on PC, on mobile, and your Google Glasses in future. Like, have you seen this in real? Yeah, you were trying that? It's like interesting, futuristic concept. Yeah, but it's more unified. So from perspective of three pillars, you can maybe reveal the third pillar on a private conversation then. We mentioned previously about this three pillars. So how in perspective of future you can see how it will go?
Yeah, I think the third pillar was in regards, like in general, to how the return on equity for different publishing equities is calculated. But the pillars I want to talk about here in particular is like the trends in general that we're seeing, and so it's a bit of a different topic. So yeah, the kind of the one that's being right now everyone is talking about is like the creative AI, right? So the AI is being the AI and the ability for assets, creative assets, to be generated like in thousands and thousands. And I do remember when I worked back in Google, right? And I think Google guys, some here present, and we had also there was this talks of these ideas, and I think one of the guys from the data scientist team asked me just one question: so who's gonna prove it? And he kind of just shattered everything for me. So in the very beginning, I was also like, there is also this possibility to generate thousands and thousands of unique assets, unique creative, but in the end, that's a client who's going to approve it. And you cannot just dump all the work on the client saying, we have such a great engine, it generated 10,000 creatives, you waste your month and approve it. So it's just a bit of different process that should be in place at the moment. And in my opinion, it's more about the kind of the automation of this approval process, or the generation of certain asset types that will be kind of pre-approved within the boundaries of what the client would like. But it's so complicated, because I'll give you an example. One asset with a very large client that's being generated by the vendor. Generated by the vendor, it can take a couple of weeks minimum, up to a month for the approval, right, on both ends. So you imagine if you have like tens of thousands of new creatives created, it'll be just a mess. And yeah, the main question is who's going to approve it, because without it, you can just forget about it. The second is basically what I talked before is the EML side, right? And again, it's more of the development for us, for DSPs and SSPs in general, and integration of the actual deep learning algorithm, neural networks, kind of just investing way more in the infrastructural aspects on the server side. So that's kind of additional things that's going to happen, because eventually the market will start asking about it, right? The people, participants, the clients, the developers, the publishers will be asking what type of models you're running, right? How exactly you're optimizing. And in order to compete, people will need to start investing in the infrastructure, which is absolutely normal. The third and the last one would be the bidding predictions, right? And how kind of to find the actual market price for each and every bid before the first auction actually occurred, based kind of on the market data that's being observed. But again, it is also something that's been in development for years and years, but just in another vertical. And it's being slightly transitioned to the gaming world, and especially to the DSP world for sure, over the last, I would say, 3 to 4 years, to what I observe. So again, it's all in development, but no time traveling or machines or anything like that. Every boring stuff that's just happening at a very slow pace.
And maybe some kind of optimization systems which can predict like the future leads on the big data. It will be more beneficial to use them, but still there will be solutions which will in future overcome even these guys, so it all can happen. Yeah. And Thomas, about your scene of the future?
Yeah, it's bleak. I'm not joking. So there are like multiple things that are worth like saying. So the first one is regarding the rise of security. So I would just say that the gap is widening for smaller developers. One thing that I've noticed is it's very hard for a new developer to come to the market. when there's so many, big companies and like existing ones. What we realize is that the Google and Apple algorithms in the stores, they work weirdly, right? Sometimes there is this game that no one takes care of, and it gets huge tons of organic. And mainly the new games, which should be like promoted, they get none. So what we've noticed is that it's sometimes like, how to say it, it's better for companies to just buy those accounts and release games on the old accounts to get the free traffic, because you will definitely get some traffic if you have a game that's like 100 to 200 million users monthly, and you can save money based on that. So this is one of the things. As I said, the gap is widening, so nothing new and original. Like it has way worse chances than before, like I don't know, 5 years ago. The second thing about the AI and the rise of those tool sets. So I think everybody's seen the NVIDIA showcase, right? There's like a whole plethora of tools that they promise they will like interact with each other and relate to the general AI and the super AI and so on. So I'm looking forward for that, because I'm trying to make my own game, and I already use some AI tools to, like Midjourney for creating some assets, textures and so on, ChatGPT to help me with the coding, which I still learn. And now imagine like it would be interconnected, and it would just say like, do me this, and you will get all the animations, all the stories, and so on. So I think there will be a rise in like normal people making games, which have no idea how to make game before, and this will cover the market. So again, it will get a little bit worse. Yeah, but anyways, it's for me it's a positive thing. It's more creativity for us.
Like in previously, everybody were creating based on their own ideas, and maybe this new fresh view on the market without huge experience can bring something new, like something fresher to already existing, and the big guys can take it from there. And
they will definitely take
it. It's just a question of time, but still it can be. So guys from the audience, maybe one have the questions? Yep. Okay, yeah, we can move on with some more into the panel. And so about the private policies, how do you think what Apple can do next with recent IDFA changes? Why you have to update the strategies to maintain efficiency?
I don't think this is a question for me. I'm just scared about it, and I know that Google will come very soon. So we'll see. But from my perspective, we will figure it out somehow.
Yes. So main goal not to be afraid. Again, if you want.
Yeah, I think I can add. Everyone is kind of right now in these B-word is talking about this kind of scan and the scan rollouts that are happening in general within the Apple ecosystem, and Apple one day becoming this kind of walled garden with no data coming in, and just maybe fractions of the data what used to before to be coming out actually. And I think it's a very good and relevant point for the industry, because if you turn up the world that supply the data, very relevant data for probabilistic models to be actually working, and the question is how to find a new one, right? Or how to leverage what you have existing to start to ensure the efficiency of the campaigns is on par with what was before. So in my opinion, what's going to happen is there will be some sort of walled garden, so there will be a limitation in data. We will all see a decrease in the efficiency, we will all see decrease in the, or increase, sorry, in the CPI and the CPA costs. It would be natural, unless certain rollouts, until certain rollouts will be happening in terms of the actual innovations on the ML side that will be able to utilize maybe additional data points that are not being used now, or in a certain way that are not being used now, that we can maybe come back to the level that it was used before. So yeah, basically it's, it'll get worse until it gets real bad, and then it'll probably be okay.
Okay. Yeah, pretty bright prediction, but it's how it goes, and yeah. So, Kamil, in case of this garden, do you agree in this point that there will be some kind of really bad one and then back to the normality? Some kind of.
I cannot predict, but I see that the capabilities of analyzing data is being limited by big vendors. But even what you explored, that web type of gaming, the life is bringing new opportunities, and the funny thing is that we have to all remember that the life cycle of big companies is much shorter than in the past. So those big ones, when we meet in 10 years, we don't know what will happen. Maybe they will not exist, some of them. So I'm not maybe talking about Google's or Apple in 10 years, but maybe in 20, I'm not sure, yes?
Like IBM, yeah, they were huge. Now
they still exist,
huge.
But there are some very big companies which doesn't, yes? I was, before I started the company, I was responsible for service provider market, so telcos. Let's observe the market. Yeah, the market exists, yeah, that is still important, but the way how beneficial it is and how innovative it is far away from us right now. It's commodity right now. So we may observe something with devices as well, yes, certain, maybe not in a year or two, but maybe in 10 or 20 years it will be different.
Yeah, I'll just add one point that I think is also relevant, that on top of what different vendors are will be imposing in terms of data restrictions, it's also important to observe what the regulators are gonna impose, because they always come like out of blue with different additional data restrictions, with all the famous GDPR and everything. And for us, within the gaming world, it's all kind of trickles down from other verticals. So what other verticals experience, let's say for 5-6 years before, especially in the finance and the banking, is all slowly coming down to the gaming. But the innovations are actually coming, in my opinion, from gaming to the other industries. So yeah, so these kind of regulators, the way the data is being processed, we already started seeing with certain clients that they're kind of started asking more questions about, for instance, unattributed data, how the unattributed data is handled, right? How it's being processed, the cybersecurity measures in place, etc. Right? Something that, let's say, during the COVID time, in reality, within the gaming world, maybe less than 1% of people were asking. Now it's being asked like on a way frequent basis within the normal conversation with the client. Right, so that's something to be expected, in my opinion, to continue, and to be more strict from the client perspective, the way the data is being shared, the way the data is being stored, etc. Maybe there will be additional GDPR 2.0 rollout or something, because the additional GDPR is more of a web-related stuff rather than mobile. They have some OBE and EDA, but they're way kind of outdated. Maybe something additional will come on top specifically for applications, and yeah, then we'll have completely new reality. But we'll see. Just an additional thing from the risk perspective that it should be bear in mind.
Like Jakub mentioned, we also can try different solutions, HTML5 and etc. And also to Jakub and Tomas about the possibility of specifically created campaigns in Playables to some regions, or maybe just specific campaigns buying for some regions. Can you maybe example something for this?
So from Playcus perspective, if we talk about the code, we have tools to show the different content, depend on the localizations, but unfortunately those platforms do not give us this information. So if something will change and the big players like Uploading, platforms like that will give us more data, then with JavaScript and all this script in the game, we'll be able to send the specific content depending on the localizations and do some special stuff inside the game. So this is my hope for the future options, like moving the playable ads into the browser, because we have lots of options over there. We could additionally read the IP, for example, and we know that this player that he already saw a game, so we can show the different content, and for sure we can show the different language, and there will be no limitation if they allow us to do some stuff outside the game.
And about the regional, maybe you have an example of interesting campaigns which work differently in different regions. So they're totally different in performance, but still.
If I have like any specific example, I can just say that if you go like hand to hand, like UA and live ops, like calendar systems, and you have a game, for example, I will tell you about two games. So one game is like US heavy, so it has like a lot of US traffic. The other one is a sports game, which the sports are mostly like fans in Europe. You just do different campaigns and you do different events for them. So for example, for the US, you just do 4th of July and Thanksgiving and these kinds of things, which are like specific also in the campaigns and creatives for this kind of thing. If you have a Chinese market, you do Chinese New Year and so on. So you need to keep track of these different geos and how like what are the things that click with the current audience, and usually it works. Yeah. Not always, but usually it brings some like added value.
Mostly it should work. Yeah.
I want to add one thing. We mostly that Popcore have only English versions of the game, so we do not translate it because the hyper casual we make obviously, but we want to sometimes create a campaign for the different countries, and we made campaigns for Korea or something like that, and I'm not sure how is it working, because if we make the playables with the translations and the game is still only in English, it's the questions of the pointless of this campaign should be translated or not.
But maybe from it you can understand should the game be translated if a lot of players from this.
Yes, yes. If we have bigger traffic from Germany or from Spain, maybe we should add this language to the game, so it's also good information from the ads.
Yeah, totally. And maybe one of the last questions. So, is there like golden rule you when you're optimizing the user acquisition performance and how it's shaped to the success of your campaigns? Or there is no golden rule, because I think it's hard to maintain this one. But golden rule is pretty common, which can be said.
I'll just say one thing, which is very broad, but iterate.
And find this golden rule for yourself.
Yeah.
So I think also collect the data. As fast as you start collecting the data, the wider view of the history of the player as you see. So yeah, this is I think the core. Know what's going on.
Genrikh?
Yeah, I'll just add that it's very important that the analysis starts way before even the campaigns launch, especially when we're talking about unattributed data, right? So basically, if the clients our clients are able to share more data from the behavior of their users, right, from the spending of their users, any additional minuscule details. Might be very important in constructing the preliminary models for testing them, for training the sets in general, before even the campaigns are launched and the actual data is being gathered, right? So it's very important always to check whether the DSP is able to utilize this kind of data, and because if there is a huge amount of this kind of data that can be passed on to the DSP, then it definitely is just a big plus. So the training can start before the actual spending starts, right? Because you don't want to spend money from just to train the model all right, without any kind of preliminary work that could be done, not being done. So yeah, I think that's the most important thing too.
Yeah, Kamil, about the data some agent stuff of golden rule and destroying this golden rule?
There is one, which is not very sexy one. You have to think about data quality all the time. And you don't have to tell about that on conferences, but you have to do it. Otherwise, everything is like, there is a, shit in, shit out, any prediction.
Yeah. And like to create the best game for this fight of Elon Musk and they say on Facebook, Zuckerberg, yeah. So you already need to have some trainings, some data to create the best game. You need to prepare and do not share it with everybody. So yeah, it will be soon. Will you be attending this fight in Rome? It's like off-topic question because Rome said that let's do it in Coliseum. So it's really funny stuff. Yeah, they just like you open the Coliseum for this fight. No, that it was true. So it's also funny.
I don't know if the memes are true or not. I thought they cancelled it because Elon's mom said no.
Oh, Elon's mom.
But I don't know if it's a meme or not. So
it can happen. No, but you need to validate this data and find the true source.
Maybe this is not the answer for this question, but I think they share the same cake. So it's like the game industry. So we have lots of places where we could publish our games, and the Netflix came with the games. So probably soon there will be Disney and other platforms. We'll have games everywhere in the buses, in the ticket validator.
Play game to fight.
Yes, because there's constantly new places. So the same with the Zuckerberg start. So there will be lots of other new platforms, lots of places, lots of huge cake to take a piece of it.
Sure. So anybody have any questions to the panelists? Yeah, thank you guys for being into this panel. Maybe you also will have some quick chat after. And thank you, Kamil, Tomas, Jakub, and Genrikh for being a part of this panel. I also was the part as Roman, and nice to be with you here. And thank you for this.
thank you.
Thank you very much.